you look at this tackle class, there's not a ton of guys in this class in the top 20. I think there's only 6 out of the top 20 that have over 34.25-inch arms. So are you worried about that? And as a coach, does that make a big difference? I'm curious.
You know what? It does. It does make a difference. And it sounds like something very trivial, but it's very important because you've got to do a couple things as an offensive tackle versus pass rush defensive ends. And number one is you got to keep them away from the quarterback. Obviously, in order to do that, you've got to be able to widen the edge. And the way you widen the edge is with length, and length doesn't always come in the form of long arms. It comes in the form of long legs, long torso, but it is your arms that keep the pass rusher away from your body. When a pass rusher can get into your body, they get an advantage because now they can work all their moves. But when you're able to keep them off your body as a tackle, right, you neutralize all the moves they can make, and you make the corner wider so that they have to go the long way to get to your quarterback, and then they end up rushing past the pass rusher. So, yeah, it's important. I mean, it's not the most important thing. If you said I can have a guy with 35-inch arms, but he had average feet and average lateral quickness, and I'd say, I don't know, what's my alternative? They said, okay, you can have a guy with 33.5-inch arms with great lateral quickness. I'd take the 33.5-inch arms with lateral quickness, every single day. But the thing about the NFL is we're always talking fractions of inches in the difference between a play being made and a play not being made. It's the same in the secondary. When you look at the secondary, everyone says, he ran a 4.5. Yeah, but this guy ran a 4.44. That's close. Yeah, you know what? Every play in the NFL is close. So you take the numbers, you take the measurables, you take the traits. That's how you win. There's always going to be exceptions, but height exceptions, weight exceptions, speed exceptions, strength. There's going to be exceptions. But if you start building your team through exceptions, then you become a poor team very, very quick. So you got to be careful about how often you drop your standards. And if you do drop your standards, then that player better have other traits that are so redeeming that there's no doubt he can overcome the exception.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never really thought about it because we talk about we like a lot of requirements. Steve Spagnuolo loves his edges to be a certain height, a certain weight, have certain arms. Same thing with Andy Reid. He likes to have his tackles have certain arms, and you think, well, these guys are good, but they don't quite fit these measurements. And if you even waver a little bit on those measurements, then you're selling yourself short and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good point that I hadn't really necessarily thought of. Is okay, well, yeah, Liam Eichenberg, I believe, had 33.75-inch arms, and you think, okay, well, Liam Eichenberg 33.75 inch, that's fine, but this is a game of inches in the NFL. Football is a game of inches. So that is something to take into consideration when you come to the draft room. And I'm curious when you're in those draft room, when you're in the war room there, looking at offensive linemen, what are you looking for?
Well, it depends on the position. Really, there's really 3 or 4 different profiles you're looking for with offensive linemen. If you start with the center inside, he doesn't need to be as massive a guy. He needs to be incredibly intelligent. He needs to be able to think quickly and react quickly and make adjustments. He has to be vocal. You'd like him to be a leader. You'd like him to be able to at least position block on the run and anchor in the pass. Your guards, depending on what type of scheme you're running, if you're a zone scheme, then they need the lateral quickness. If you're a gap scheme, then you want to see some power off the line of scrimmage. You want to see him be able to get to the second level and move a little bit. I think pass rush for guards has become more and more important just because of the 3 techniques and their ability to create that havoc straight up the middle at a quarterback. And your right tackle is typically, probably a little bit inferior as an athlete to your left tackle, but you still can't get away with a guy who's not athletic and doesn't have length. And then your left tackle is kind of the marquee position because he's typically going against the best pass rusher every week. So you want a guy, as we've talked about, with some length, some size, obviously athletic ability. You just look at what the Raiders just paid Colton Miller, who's only going to be in his 4th year, and they're average of over $18 million a year for a young 24-year-old left tackle. It just shows you the value of that position. So it's they're all kind of different profiles for each, and then within each team, everyone kind of has a different profile on their own. And that's what every team does. They have what they call position profile, position parameters. These are the traits that we're looking for this specific position. And then you try to stick with those when you go through free agency or the draft process.
When we talk about these certain parameters, there's been a few guys come through in this draft process that you look at and you say, okay, these guys do fit the parameters, but sometimes they fall later and they're projected later than the Chiefs would want to take them at 31. I think Dylan Redunz, I brought him up to you prior to
Mhm.
starting the podcast, is one of those guys who's projected kind of as a late second, early third round guy. But could you see the Chiefs maybe in air quotes overdrafting, because to them it's not overdrafting, but to the analysts and everybody else it's overdrafting and finding a tackle like that at 31?
I mean, I don't think you can put anything past anybody. I think that everybody's looking for a redeeming quality. Everybody's, so we talked about exceptions. You don't want to fill your team with a bunch of guys. Well, he's not quite this, but he's that.
Yeah.
If the redeeming quality in a guy can override kind of the exception you're making and taking him because of a physical trait, then there's value to doing that. And then the other thing is that you never know what's going on in a draft room and what a team actually values. I mean, they're going to send some smoke signals out there. They're going to do diversionary tactics. Now, when you're drafting where the Chiefs are, that's not a big deal because you're so far down that it doesn't matter. But those teams up high, they're never going to really tell you the truth. I think the only team right now that can tell you the truth is Jacksonville.
Right.
We know they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence. Everyone thinks that the Jets are going to draft Zach Wilson. I don't know that yet. I don't know. They may not. They may just be, they may be trying to diversionary tactic on us. So I would say this to Chiefs fans, that given the history of that organization and the men making the decisions, whomever they pick, they have conviction about him. And he's the guy that they truly believe in. They've done their research. They've done more than just read draft reports on a guy.
Right.
They've sent people out to see him. Their coaches have worked with him. They've interviewed him. They've done physicals. They've done background checks. They've put him through the paces. They've watched every single snap of film. They've got their hands on practice film to see how he works in practice. They've done it all. And you can have confidence he's the right guy. I don't know that you can say that with every NFL organization, because there's some that don't have the history that, the men making the decisions in Kansas City do. But those guys, they know what they're doing.